Looks like our friend Martin was a stockbroker, a successful one at that, working for 10 years and having his own team, probably making 6 figures or more. But he wasn't happy with his own success and he wanted more. And in the pursuit of finding more, he lost everything. Now he's homeless. Let's see what happens to Martin in chapter 16, titled Reclaiming Glory. Out in the forest the orange tree grows, way in the back nobody knows. The fruit it grows is magical indeed. Just one bite will put you to sleep. Welcome back. This is an Orange Tree video production called Bedtime Stories with Jared. Here you'll hear stories read in a whisper to induce relaxation, sleep, and ASMR tingles. Please make sure that your headphones are plugged in and over each ear before you begin. Let's get started. Many of Martin Fowler's friends chose an easier way out of the hard situations that they found themselves in. Some jumped from their sky-rise apartments. Some tasted the end of a gun barrel and let a small explosive charge end all the pain. Some used a belt to hang from the ceiling fan. But Martin held on to a belief that no matter how hard things got, that he could get it all back. Martin made money the long, hard way. He could do that again. He made money the fast way, too, and he could do that again. He just needed to find the right opportunity. The rain felt hard on Martin over the years in the New York City alleyways. Martin's beard grew long. His face remained forever dirty. He lost a tooth or two along the way. Someday he would be able to buy new teeth. He just needed the right opportunity. Martin collected donations from people walking on the street in a discarded Grande Starbucks cup. He saved his donations. Not all homeless men spend their contribution money on booze. Martin found a hiding place. Martin found lots of hiding places. At night, when everyone else in the alley was asleep, Martin would carve at the sides of bricks in the mortar. Night after night he would carve. Eventually, after a week, he could shake the brick. Then he would stop carving. Then he started wiggling. Then he would wiggle night after night. He would wiggle the brick, and eventually the brick would come loose. Once the brick became loose, he would give the brick a symbol on a tiny piece of paper. The paper had lots of symbols from lots of alleys. Toward the beginning of the paper, some of the symbols were crossed off. Martin used to be more optimistic about his hidden safe havens. He used to assign a symbol before he started carving. But then something would happen. The police would shuffle him off and start patrolling the alley, or another homeless man or woman would take interest in his sleeping cove and discover his wiggling brick. Then he would cross the symbol off and move on to a new location where he would start again. Now, a brick does not get a symbol until he has removed it completely. The nice thing about some bricks is that they are hollow. Now, these are gold mines for Martin. To save money, some builders use bricks that have no filling. They have holes in them to reduce the weight of the brick and the amount of material that's needed to make it. This, of course, reduces the cost. Martin gives these bricks a special symbol. In these bricks, Martin can store much larger amounts of money. It was 9 months of carving, marking, and saving until Martin had enough. He bought a razor and a night at a hotel. He cleaned himself up and cut his hair. Once he was cleaned up sufficiently to enter a nice store without causing disgust, he found a fine suit maker, and he paid $6,000 for the best suit that could be made for him. He looked professional again, and now he had his ticket to a better future. Martin was good at talking to people as a stockbroker. He learned how to separate people from their money with the simple promise of wealth. As a homeless man, Martin learned to read people and give them what they wanted without leaning on the glamours of success. Now he had 3 things that made a perfect combination for his climb back to the top. He had the skill to sell any person anything. He had a suit that gave him that hint of glamour. And he had an unbelievable story that people would want to hear again and again. Martin knew how to get back on top. Martin convinced people to give him the spotlight, and he wowed people with his stories. Martin spoke about what it takes to survive in a world that seems hopeless. He gave people a reason to work harder, and when they were done listening to Martin speak, all the corporate sheep would go back to their offices. Martin's speeches motivated people to do amazing things. They would work longer hours and stay later into the nights. They would come to work earlier too. They would skip lunches. And, if Martin could spend night after night carving at a brick, well, then they could spend a few hours carving at their own metaphorical bricks to find their own happiness. After a few weeks or months, the effects of Martin's speeches wear away. About that time, the company would call to see if Martin was ready to speak again at the next semi-annual employee appreciation party. "Everyone just loved you last year, Mr. Fowler. Can you please speak for us again?" "Oh, your price has gone up? How much?" "You're worth every penny. Absolutely." Martin was making more as a speaker than he ever did as a stockbroker, and he had a life experience that people wanted to hear about. They paid great money to hear it over and over and over again. They brought friends to hear him again. His story became their mantra. His story became their reason for success, and they paid him well for his stories. And the best part is that all his stories were true. So, we saw Martin as a stockbroker in New York City at a very expensive private club, and we heard how he lost all of his money and became homeless. And he spent 9 months on the streets of New York, pandering for money and hiding his money behind bricks. A lot of people tell me that it seems unrealistic to save $6,000 out of quarters and dollars on the street. And I'm reminded of a 2020 investigation. And I think that the investigation was done in the late 90s, maybe the mid-90s. They were looking into panhandlers in New York City and how much they actually make. It's a curiosity that most of us don't really think about. We make assumptions that they don't make very much. And of course, the biggest assumption that we all make, which is true in many cases, but not all, is that the panhandlers don't really need our help. In one such case, on the 2020 episode, they found a panhandler who looked absolutely destitute. He had dreadlocks that went down to his belly, and he hadn't had a haircut or a hair wash in many, many years. And they put a hidden camera on him all day, and they watched him, and they collected data about how much money got put into his cup. But then, at the end of the day, they were able to capture a video that nobody expected. They saw him take off a wig. The dreadlocks were fake. He got into a very expensive car and he drove away. Which furthered the question, how much do panhandlers make? Through the course of their study, they found that on average, the panhandlers of New York City that they were able to track made between $25,000 and $30,000 per year. Now, my first job was in 1995, working for AMC Cinemas, and I think I made about $5,000 a year. It was part-time, and then I got a full-time job after that when I finished college. Sorry, not college. I finished high school, and then I made $18,000 a year. So now these panhandlers who offer no skill or service were bringing in more money than I did working 40 hours a week at a job that paid minimum wage. It certainly seems attractive to be able to make that much money and not have to really do anything for it. Now, that being said, I don't envy them having to sit outside, rain or shine. And it's a lot of work, it's a hit to the pride. But my point is not whether or not it's a good career to pursue panhandling. My point is that it's very reasonable that Martin was able to pay for food and occasional necessities and save up $6,000 for a suit in just 9 months. It's very reasonable that he was able to stow it away and hide it. And that's probably the toughest part when you're living on the streets and you don't have a place to keep your stuff safe, is finding a place to put your money, a place where no one's going to steal it from you while you sleep. So, it's a good thing this story is fiction, but I feel bad for Martin, and I envy his work ethic, and I'm glad that he was able to save himself from the life on the streets. That's a heavy thought, isn't it? Too heavy for a bedtime story. Welcome back, my orange lovers, to another video of Orange Tree Productions. Ooh, wrong book. We're going to talk about that book a little bit later. Not today, though. We're continuing with the last speech. And we left off with chapter 16. So we're going to start with chapter 17. I hope that you've been getting some good sleep watching these videos, and I hope that the sound of the fire hasn't been too loud for you. So, chapter 17 is called Finding the Next Level, and next level is written in quotation marks. No person is ever happy with success. Success leads on to desire for bigger success. The successful person needs always to strive for the next level. Martin Fowler had found success again, but still he wanted more. He started teaching people how he made his money. He opened a school of sorts. Martin Fowler's School for the Not Yet Wealthy. He named it this as a joke, but the name stuck. Men and women paid $5,000 for an introductory course. They paid $15,000 for the next level. And if they were ready for the big time, they paid him $50,000. In exchange, Martin taught them everything that he knew about crafting the perfect story and communicating that story from the stage in a way that made people open their wallets. It was soon after he opened the school that angry former students, looking for someone to blame, started coming back. They gave him everything so that they could be rich. But they didn't put in the work, and they didn't craft the stories. Still, they were mad at him. These ungrateful, lazy students would yell at Martin until they grew tired, and then they would send a lawyer to yell for them. The lawyer could do them no good, however, because Martin took their client's money in exchange for a service, and Martin provided the service that they paid for. So the lawyers couldn't do anything but yell, and get paid to yell. Why is it that people who have lost everything will pay whatever money they have left into a system that won't produce results? Martin thought it was sad but funny. The lawyers knew that they could not get any money out of Martin, but as long as they kept yelling, they could keep billing. Their clients were racking up larger debts. Each of them would have been better if they had just put the same level of dedication and hard work into the craft that Martin was teaching. That would have at least produced results for them, and that is how they would have found the path toward recuperating the money that they spent on Martin's programs. Some of the failed students would stop there. If the lawyer could not get them money, then they just move on with their lives. They remain sad and angry. They think of Martin Fowler and how he ruined their lives. But they never think about what they could have done differently. Some students stop after the lawyers, but for every 100 rational students, there must always be one irrational student who needs to escalate his or her pain to the next level. These extra special people seek a permanent answer to their ailments. If it means that they will end up in prison forever, they will put a bullet into their problems and save everyone else. At least, that is what they tell themselves. The first such person who intended to shoot Martin Fowler dead actually got through to Martin, because Martin did not think that anyone would try to take his life over educational courses. The shooter got close, and Martin took a bullet in the shoulder. Martin learned that day that truly angry people have trouble shooting, especially if they don't have the years of training that it takes to be able to separate the emotion from the shot and suppress the effects of adrenaline and other natural hormone spikes. So even though the shooter was very close to Martin at the time of the incident, Martin received a very minor wound that would eventually heal. Mostly. When the second shooter arrived at another event, Martin still did not expect it. Certainly it was unfortunate luck that one person should want to see Martin dead, but it was extremely unlikely that any other person would ever feel the same way. However, someone else did feel the same way. The second shooter could not get close to Martin, so he fired from a hallway into the stage, hoping that the 400-foot distance between the hallway and the stage would not be a problem. It was. That bullet missed Martin completely, but Martin learned quickly, and soon he learned to recognize the look of the shooter. Martin and the event security team started working together to identify threats. Martin decided to start using the code word Republican to identify gun-toting revenge seekers. Martin found this to be an ironic term since he himself was a registered Republican, but the code word does not have to be accurate. When Republicans entered the venue, Martin could almost smell them. The hairs would stand on the back of his neck, and Martin would say to his wife, "We have to be careful today." At first, Martin let the security teams deal with the Republicans. Martin wore a small radio, and he would say into the radio, "Republican in blue shirt near the water cooler." Or he would say, "Republican spotted eating eggs at a table in the third from the door." The security team would approach the table or the water cooler and remove the threat, but this did not make things better for Martin. it always seemed to make things worse, because it created a scene, and that cast a pallor over the event. This hurt sales. After 10 or so botched events, Martin started approaching the Republicans on his own. This caught the shooters off guard. They never expected to be the target of attention from the same man that they had come to kill. Martin learned how to read people when he was on Wall Street. He perfected his ability to read people while begging on the streets of New York. He knows what they want, and he knows how to tell them that they really want something else. Republicans became a game for Martin. They were the test of Martin's wits and skill. Either Martin could convince them that they wanted Martin to live, or Martin could convince them that they could have a better chance at killing him in the other room. Of course, in the other room is where the security team could take the Republicans down much more quietly, without causing a scene. Martin's wife could not take it anymore. She stopped coming to the events. The stakes were too high. Eventually, Martin would find a Republican at every event, but that is the price of fame. The day after Martin introduced himself to Norman Shooter, he saw a Republican enter the Marriott Convention Center. The way that she held her bag, he knew. The way that she looked right through him as she scanned the room, he knew that she was there for someone else. This was good. This means Martin had more room to work, and so he did. He introduced himself. He worked his magic. He talked to her until she stopped clutching the bag, and then he said, "Martha, I have a friend that I want you to meet." Martin motioned across the room. "Eugenia, this is Martha. She is a Republican." Martha looked at Martin with curiosity, and she shook Eugenia's hand. "I did vote for Bush," Martha says, "but I don't consider myself a Republican, Mr. Fowler. I'm more of an independent." Eugenia smiled at Martha's funny remark. "I have something to show you, Martha. Maybe the three of us could go to my room. I'll tell you what. Check your purse at the front desk, because people who bring their checkbooks into my suite usually end up writing me a very large check, so leave your money at the front desk. In that way, you can talk to me freely." Martha seemed to be uneasy about giving up her purse, but Eugenia and Martin were convincing people. She gave her purse to the hotel manager, and the three of them took the elevators upstairs together. Have a wonderful evening. Get some sleep, and hopefully you're tired now. If you're not tired yet, remember to start the playlist over at chapter 1 and go to sleep as you listen to the story all over again. Good night, and we'll see you next week.